The crystalline vessel Stellar Prism drifted silently through the purple-tinged nebula clouds of the Andromeda sector, its faceted hull refracting the light of distant stars. First observer Kellic stood at the monitoring station, their crystalline form shifting through shades of deep blue as they processed the incoming sensor data. Something unusual had triggered the boundary alerts. First observer, we've detected an anomalous vessel approaching coordinate Sector 7, announced second monitor Vix, their crystalline appendages clicking against the sensor panels. Configuration unknown, but the energy signature suggests primitive fusion drive technology. Kellic's surface rippled with patterns of curiosity. The Andromeda sector was far from any known civilization's regular travel routes. "Display visual," they commanded, their voice resonating through the crystalline chamber. The holographic display materialized, showing a small spacecraft barely larger than a Scytheri scout vessel. Its design was completely foreign to their databases, all smooth curves and practical angles rather than the crystalline geometries they were accustomed to. Most peculiar was the complete lack of defensive crystalline latticing on its hull. Life sign analysis, Kellic inquired, their form shifting to a more focused configuration. Single occupant, Vix reported, their facets reflecting confusion. Biological entity, carbon-based, internal temperature far higher than optimal parameters. By all readings, the creature should be in a state of systemic failure, yet it appears to be functioning normally. Kellic processed this information through their decision matrices. The situation matched Protocol 17. Unauthorized entry by potentially hazardous anomalous entities. The correct response was clear. "Deploy containment pulse," they ordered. "Minimum intensity. We merely need to disable their propulsion systems for standard quarantine procedures." The Stellar Prism's weapon systems hummed to life, sending a precisely calculated energy burst toward the intruding vessel. The pulse struck with perfect accuracy, enveloping the small ship in crackling energy. Systems across the unknown craft began shutting down exactly as predicted. What happened next shattered every protocol in the Scytheri response database. A communication signal burst through their frequencies, carrying an unexpected sound. It started low, then built in intensity. A rhythmic, melodic vibration that sent discordant ripples through the crystalline crew's forms. It took their translators several seconds to identify the sound based on their xenobiological archives. The human was laughing. "Oh man, you should see your faces." The alien voice transmitted, still bubbling with that unsettling sound. "I mean, I assume you have faces, being all crystal-like and sparkly out there." Kellic's form flickered between shades of confusion and alarm. This response violated every known pattern of behavior. Disabled vessels were supposed to emit distress signals. Their occupants were supposed to experience fear, anger, or at minimum, concern. Not this. "Unknown vessel," Kellic transmitted formally. "You have entered restricted space. Your systems have been disabled for quarantine procedures. Cease your acoustic emissions and prepare for boarding." The laughter increased in volume. "Quarantine procedures. Classic. Hey, quick question. Did you folks actually check what kind of pulse would work on my engines? Because I've got to tell you, that tickled." To the horror of the Scytheri crew, the small vessel's engines flared back to life. Their supposedly foolproof containment pulse had failed to achieve more than a momentary disruption. "Your containment measures have failed," Kellic stated, their crystalline form now pulsing with warning patterns. "This is highly irregular." "Oh, irregular doesn't even begin to cover it," the human responded cheerfully. "But since you went through all the trouble of saying hello, why don't we get properly acquainted? I'm Dr. Marcus Chen, xenobiologist, and apparently your first human visitor. Now about that boarding invitation. Mind if I park this thing somewhere? Your crystal ship is gorgeous, and I've got so many questions about how you maintain structural integrity during FTL travel." The Scytheri crew experienced their first collective moment of uncertainty. They had shot at this creature, and instead of fleeing or fighting, it wanted to discuss their engineering principles. Worse still, it seemed genuinely excited about the prospect. First Observer Kellix made a decision that would change galactic history. They said yes. The containment chamber aboard the Stellar Prism wasn't designed for comfort, but Dr. Marcus Chen had already transformed it into what he called his temporary research station. The Sktheri observation team watched in bewilderment as their supposed prisoner turned every analysis attempt into an impromptu scientific exchange. "Fascinating molecular structure you've got there," Chen remarked, pressing his hand against the crystalline wall. His breath created a small patch of condensation, which he immediately used to sketch a complex molecular diagram. "The lattice arrangement suggests piezoelectric properties. Do you communicate through vibration patterns?" Third researcher mix shifted uncomfortably, their crystalline form flickering between shades of confusion and scientific curiosity. "You are meant to be undergoing standard containment protocols, not conducting research of your own." "Why not both?" Chen grinned, adding mathematical notations to his diagram. "I mean, you're studying me. I'm studying you. Seems fair, doesn't it? By the way, the resonance frequency of this containment field is slightly off. You might want to adjust it by 0.3 Hz to prevent harmonics buildup." The observation team exchanged troubled glances. The human had casually identified a minor calibration issue that their own engineers had been tracking for weeks. More disturbing was his apparent lack of concern about being held in a high-security containment chamber. "Your behavior patterns are highly irregular," stated Chief Researcher Zelix, their form projecting authoritative patterns. "Previous specimens have exhibited stress responses, attempted escape, or displayed aggressive tendencies." Chen looked up from his calculations, eyes twinkling with amusement. "Previous specimens probably didn't have degrees in xenobiology and quantum mechanics. Speaking of which, that crystal growth experiment you're running in Lab 3, I can hear the harmonic resonance from here. You might want to check on it." Alarm rippled through the observation team. The human couldn't possibly know about their ongoing experiments, yet a quick check confirmed that the crystalline growth chamber in Lab 3 was indeed approaching critical resonance. "How did you acquire this information?" Zelix demanded, their surface now rippling with concerned patterns. "Simple observation," Chen shrugged, starting a new diagram, the condensation. "The way sound travels through your crystalline architecture is fascinating. Each corridor acts like an acoustic waveguide. I've been mapping your ship's internal layout based on the resonance patterns. Did you know you can tell the difference between a research lab and a storage room just by the way footsteps echo?" The human's casual revelation of his analytical capabilities sent shockwaves through the research team. What they had dismissed as random humming and tapping had been sophisticated acoustic analysis. Their prisoner had been systematically studying their technology, while they thought they were studying him. "Your containment will be upgraded to include acoustic dampening," Zelix announced, trying to regain control of the situation. Chen's smile widened. "That would be counterproductive to your research, wouldn't it? You want to understand humans, but you'd be cutting off one of our primary means of interaction. Besides, I've already learned so much about your crystalline technology. For instance, that supposedly unbreakable containment field. It has a resonant frequency that matches perfectly with the human whistle range." To demonstrate his point, Chen let out a precise whistle. The containment field shimmered briefly, its energy patterns disrupted by the exact frequency he had identified. He didn't attempt to escape. He merely winked at the startled researchers. "Don't worry," he assured them, returning to his calculations. "I'm not going anywhere. This is the most fascinating research opportunity I've had in years. Though I do have one small request. Any chance I could get some proper drawing materials? These breath-drawn diagrams are a bit temporary for my taste." The Sktheri researchers faced an unprecedented situation. Their containment protocols had been designed to hold hostile or frightened specimens. They had no procedures for dealing with an enthusiastically cooperative prisoner who might understand their technology better than they did. First observer Kelix would not be pleased with this development. The testing chamber hummed with energy as the Scathuri prepared their most sophisticated analysis protocols. After 2 weeks of failed attempts to properly study their human subject, First observer Kelix had authorized the use of advanced psychological evaluation methods. Environmental simulation chamber activated, announced lead technician Rix, their crystalline form glowing with focused purpose. Beginning Scenario 1. Extreme environmental stress. Inside the chamber, Dr. Chen watched with interest as the space around him transformed into a perfect recreation of an ice planet's surface. The temperature plummeted to -40 degrees. Instead of showing distress, he began making snow angels on the forming ice surface. Fascinating environmental manipulation technology. He called out, his breath visible in the frigid air. The holographic resolution is incredible. Though you might want to adjust the crystallization rate of the ice formation, it's a bit too uniform to be natural. Rix's form flickered with frustration, increasing environmental hazard levels. The simulation shifted to a desert landscape, temperature soaring to dangerous levels. Chen responded by removing his outer shirt and fashioning it into a makeshift shade. Reminds me of my postdoc work in the Sahara, he commented cheerfully. Though the atmospheric moisture content here is off by about 3% for a true desert environment. Proceeding to psychological stress scenarios, Zelix commanded, their crystalline surface showing patterns of determination. The environment shifted again, this time creating an endless void of space. Most species experienced severe anxiety when faced with infinite emptiness. Shen's response was to begin calculating the positions of the simulated stars and pointing out constellations that weren't quite accurately placed. Moving to fear response analysis, Zelix announced, their voice carrying an edge of desperation. The void transformed into a series of rapidly shifting nightmare scenarios, creatures from humanity's darkest legends, situations designed to trigger primal fears. Chen began critiquing them like a movie reviewer. Interesting choice with the shadow monsters, he noted, casually dodging a simulated tentacle. Though if you're pulling these from Earth's mythology, you might want to research our horror film industry. These effects are a bit last century. The observation team's frustration reached new heights when Chen started suggesting improvements to their fear-inducing algorithms. If you adjust the temporal phase of the shadow manifestations, he offered, sketching quick equations in his notepad, you could achieve a much more unsettling effect. Want me to show you the math? Implementing maximum psychological pressure, Zelix ordered, their form now pulsing with intense patterns of determination. The chamber activated its most powerful capability, reality distortion. The space around Chen began to fold in impossible ways, creating non-Euclidean geometries designed to shatter any organic mind's grasp on reality. Chen's face lit up with pure delight. Now this is fascinating. You've managed to create localized space-time distortions within a contained field. The applications for faster-than-light travel research would be incredible. He pulled out his notepad again, eagerly sketching diagrams. The topological implications alone. Zelix's form vibrated with disbelief. The simulation is meant to induce existential crisis, not inspire scientific inquiry. Oh, sorry about that, Chen replied, not looking up from his calculations. Would it help if I pretended to be disturbed? Though honestly, these spatial distortions are far too interesting for me to focus on being afraid. Have you considered using this technology for advanced propulsion systems? The testing chamber powered down, leaving Chen standing in the empty space, still scribbling enthusiastically in his notepad. The observation team huddled in emergency consultation, their crystalline forms showing patterns of confusion and concern. The humans' responses defy all known psychological models, Rix reported, their voice carrying harmonics of worry. Each attempt to study him results in him studying us instead. First observer Kelix's form darkened with deep concern. Prepare the deep memory probe. If we cannot understand him through simulation, we must examine his mind directly. Unknown to them, Chen's smile widened slightly as he continued his calculations. The Scatheri were about to discover that human memory was far more complex than they imagined. The memory probe chamber cast an eerie purple glow across the crystalline walls. Dr. Chen sat comfortably in the examination chair, examining the delicate neural interfaces with professional interest, while the Scatheri prepared their equipment. "Fascinating design," he commented, running a finger along one of the crystal filaments. "The piezoelectric resonance must allow for direct neural coupling, though you might want to adjust the frequency modulation. Human brains operate on slightly different wavelengths than what you've calibrated for." Chief Researcher Zelix's form rippled with barely contained frustration. "The calibrations are precise. Please remain still while we initiate the procedure." "Just trying to help," Chen shrugged, settling back. "Fair warning, though. Human memory isn't quite as linear as you might expect. We tend to associate things in rather unusual ways." The Scatheri research team activated their equipment, crystal arrays humming with carefully controlled energy. The neural interfaces connected with Chen's consciousness, and the memory extraction began. Almost immediately, the viewing crystals filled with a chaos of images and sensations. "This is unexpected," third researcher Mix announced, their form flickering with confusion. "The human's memory structure appears to be linked to something called music. Each significant memory has an associated sound pattern." Chen smiled. "Oh yeah, that would be my study playlist. Different songs for different subjects. Really helps with memory retention. Speaking of which, the quantum mechanics review set you're accessing right now goes great with classical piano." As if responding to his words, the memory probe filled with the complex mathematics of quantum theory, each equation flowing with the rhythm of a piano concerto. The Scatheri observers watched in bewilderment as formulas danced across their viewing crystals in perfect time with the music. Switching to deeper memory analysis, Zelix commanded, adjusting the probe's intensity. The memory shifted, but not as expected. Instead of revealing secrets or vulnerabilities, the probe displayed a series of what appeared to be human entertainment programs. Hundreds of stories about first contact scenarios, alien encounters, and interstellar diplomacy filled the viewing crystals. "Ah, my science fiction collection," Chen noted cheerfully. "You know, humans have been imagining meeting alien life for centuries. We've probably thought of every possible first contact scenario, including, believe it or not, one pretty similar to this situation." Zelix's form pulsed with skepticism. "You had anticipated being held for study by a crystalline species." "Well, not crystalline specifically," Chen admitted, "but being captured and studied. That's a classic. Though usually in the stories, the humans are a bit more frightened and a lot less interested in the scientific possibilities." The memory probe deepened its scan, seeking core emotional responses. Instead, it encountered layers of scientific knowledge interwoven with what the Scatheri systems identified as jokes. Each attempt to understand human fear responses returned data about curiosity and humor instead. "The probe is encountering significant resistance," Mex reported, their crystalline surface showing patterns of concern. "The subject's mind appears to be laughing at our attempts to analyze it." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Laughing? No, I'm actually trying to help. I'm presenting the memories in an organized fashion. See." The viewing crystal suddenly displayed a detailed catalog of human scientific achievement, each discovery accompanied by an anecdote about the researcher's sense of humor or moment of insight. "This is unprecedented," Zelix declared, their form now showing clear signs of distress. "The subject is actively curating his memories during a deep probe scan. Such control should not be possible." "Oh, that's nothing," Chen replied with a grin. "Wait until you see how we handle creative visualization. Would you like me to demonstrate the way humans imagine four-dimensional objects? Fair warning. It might make your crystalline structure resonate in some unusual ways." First observer Kelix, watching from the observation chamber, made a swift decision. "Terminate the probe immediately," they ordered. This human's mind is too dangerous to explore further. As the neural interfaces disconnected, Chen stretched casually. That was interesting. You know, with some minor adjustments, this technology could revolutionize human education systems. Want to discuss potential modifications? The Scathari were beginning to understand that they hadn't captured a specimen. They had invited chaos itself aboard their ship, and it was wearing a lab coat. The emergency council chamber of the stellar prism sparkled with agitated energy as the ship's senior researchers gathered to discuss their increasingly problematic human situation. Their crystalline forms cast fractured reflections across the walls, creating a kaleidoscope of worry patterns. The human has now been aboard for 23 standard cycles. First observer Kelix began, their form pulsing with deep concern. In that time, he has compromised our containment protocols, analyzed our technology, and resisted all standard research procedures. Not resisted. Chief Researcher Zelix corrected, their surface rippling with frustrated harmonics. He has participated enthusiastically, but on his own terms. Yesterday, he offered to help optimize our sensor array calibration. His suggestions were disturbingly accurate. From the research chamber's monitoring crystal, they watched as Chen continued his latest activity, teaching junior researchers about human music theory and its applications to crystalline resonance patterns. Several young Scathari were gathered around him, their forms vibrating with unprecedented frequencies of excitement. He appears to be installing an appreciation for chaos into our youth, third researcher Mix observed, their tone carrying harmonics of alarm. This morning, I discovered two junior researchers attempting to modify their resonance patterns to reproduce something called jazz. The council chamber hummed with concerned murmurs. Musical experimentation outside of traditional crystalline harmonies was practically unheard of in their society. The fact that their supposedly contained specimen was inspiring such behavior was deeply troubling. We must address the more serious concern. Lead technician Rix interjected, their form displaying urgent patterns. Our analysis of his activities suggests he has been systematically mapping our entire ship's systems while appearing to engage in casual conversation. A holographic display activated, showing Chen's seemingly random movements throughout his permitted areas. When overlaid with the ship's structural diagram, they formed a precise analytical pattern. Every joke about crystal resonance contained exact measurements, Rix continued. Each casual observation about acoustics mapped another section of our security grid. His humming patterns have matched our computer system's base frequencies with unsettling precision. Most concerning, Zelix added, is his effect on our crew. 3 security teams have requested transfers, claiming his constant smiling makes them feel like they're the ones being examined. 2 engineering teams have begun implementing his suggestions without proper authorization. And this morning, I discovered our quantum physics division debating something called cosmic humor. The display shifted to show Chen in real time, currently engaged in what he called a physics comedy routine, with a group of increasingly engaged junior scientists. Each punchline somehow contained a precisely calculated resonance frequency that made their crystalline forms vibrate pleasantly. He is systematically rewriting our cultural protocols through carefully calculated applications of chaos. Kelix realized, their form darkening with worry. Each laugh, each joke, each casual observation has been part of a sophisticated reprogramming effort. Should we not simply terminate the research project? Mix suggested, their form showing hesitation patterns. I fear it's too late, Rix responded. His influence has spread too far. This morning, I observed 3 separate research teams attempting to develop what they called a sense of humor. They claimed it might advance our understanding of quantum uncertainty. A sudden alert tone interrupted their discussion. The ship's main computer was detecting unusual energy patterns throughout the vessel, crystalline structures resonating in new, unpredictable ways. The source was traced to Chen's latest lecture on the relationship between human laughter and wave function collapse. We must make a decision, Kelix announced, their form radiating authority. Do we continue to allow this human to transform our society, or do we take more drastic measures to contain his influence? Before anyone could respond, a new alert sounded. Multiple human vessels had just appeared at the edge of their sensor range. Their configuration was unlike anything in Sc-theory records, and their energy signatures were pulsing in patterns that matched Chen's laughing frequencies perfectly. The human had never been trapped aboard their ship. He had been preparing them for something much bigger. The Stellar Prism's command center crystallized into a hub of frantic activity as the human fleet approached. 12 vessels of varying sizes had emerged from hyperspace, their formations creating patterns that somehow resembled a smile when viewed on the tactical display. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, announced Communications Officer Tix, their crystalline form vibrating with confusion. But the signals, they're not standard communication protocols. Through the ship's audio systems came an unexpected sound. Music. Complex, rhythmic patterns that sent ripples through the crystalline walls of the vessel. The Sc-theory crew found their own forms resonating in response, creating harmonies they had never experienced before. In his chamber, Dr. Chen smiled as he felt the vibrations. Right on schedule, he murmured, making one final notation in his datapad. And playing Earth's classical masterpieces too. Someone back home has a wonderful sense of dramatic timing. First observer Kelix burst into the chamber, their form radiating urgent patterns. Explain this immediately. Your species is transmitting chaos directly into our ship's crystalline matrix. Not chaos, Chen corrected cheerfully. Mozart's Symphony No. 40 in G minor, specifically calibrated to match your crystalline resonance frequencies. I sent them quite detailed measurements during my stay here. Fascinating how your ship's structure responds to certain musical patterns, isn't it? The revelation hit Kelix with stunning force. Every time you hummed or whistled. I was testing acoustic responses, yes. Chen nodded. Did you know your crystalline technology is perfectly suited for appreciating Earth's musical heritage? Your entire ship is essentially a giant resonance chamber. The applications for cultural exchange are extraordinary. Through the ship's systems, Mozart's symphony shifted seamlessly into what Chen identified as jazz. The crystalline walls of the stellar prism began pulsing with new patterns, creating visual displays of color and light that had never been seen before in Sc-theory architecture. Your ships are attacking us with sound. Kelix accused, their form flickering between patterns of anger and fascination. Chen laughed, the sound perfectly harmonizing with the ongoing symphony. Not attacking. Communicating. Think about it. Your entire civilization is based on crystalline resonance. We humans have spent our history creating art through sound and resonance. We're probably the species best suited to communicate with you in your own natural language. As if to demonstrate his point, the human fleet shifted position. Each movement synchronized perfectly with the music, creating geometric patterns that matched traditional Sc-theory cultural symbols. It was a display of profound cultural understanding expressed through spatial mathematics. This was your plan from the beginning, Kelix realized. When we captured you, you invited the first human cultural attaché aboard your vessel. Chen finished. Those escape attempts you were so worried about. Just me ensuring your ship could handle the full range of human musical expression without structural damage. Can't have Mozart bringing down the walls, after all. The music changed again, this time to a complex orchestral piece that made Kelix's crystalline form resonate with unexpected emotions. Around the ship, other Sc-theory were experiencing similar responses, their usual ordered patterns dissolving into new and beautiful configurations. What is happening to us? Kelix demanded, though their voice carried harmonics of wonder rather than fear. You're experiencing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Chen explained gently. Your crystalline forms are perfect for appreciating the full emotional range of human music. We're not just showing you our culture, we're sharing it in a way that speaks directly to your very nature. Through the ship's communications came a new transmission, an invitation to establish formal diplomatic relations between humanity and the Sc-theory, drafted as a musical score that would create perfect crystalline harmonies when performed. Chen stood up, straightening his jacket. "Well, first observer Kellex, shall we answer them? I believe your ship's crystalline matrix would produce an excellent response in the key of G major." The grand assembly chamber of the stellar prism had been transformed. Its crystalline walls pulsed with harmonics as representatives from both species gathered for the first official diplomatic exchange. The human delegation had brought what they called an orchestra, arranging the musicians in a pattern that created perfect resonance with the ship's structure. Dr. Chen stood at the center of it all, now wearing a formal Earth diplomatic uniform, though he had somehow managed to add crystalline elements that sparkled in harmony with the Sktheri forms around him. The key to understanding each other, he addressed the assembled gathering, lies in recognizing that what one species calls chaos, another calls art. First observer Kellex, their form now displaying previously impossible patterns of iridescent color, moved forward to respond. Our initial assessment of human unpredictability was flawed. We perceived disorder where there was instead a higher form of order, one that embraces variation as a strength. The orchestra began to play, each note precisely calculated to create sympathetic vibrations within the crystalline architecture. The Sktheri observers found themselves involuntarily resonating, their forms creating spontaneous harmonies with the music. What would have once caused alarm now produced expressions of wonder. "Your species shot at my ship," Shen reminded them with a grin. And I responded with laughter. Not because I didn't take you seriously, but because I immediately recognized the musical potential of your crystalline technology. Every weapon you used gave me more data about your resonance frequencies. The human musicians transitioned into a new piece, one composed specifically for this occasion. It incorporated both traditional Earth movements and mathematical patterns that matched Sktheri cultural symbols. The chamber's walls began to shift color in response, creating a visual symphony that complemented the auditory experience. "We have discovered 17 new crystalline configurations previously thought impossible," announced Chief Researcher Zelix, their form vibrating with excitement. "The introduction of human musical principles has revolutionized our understanding of our own physical structure." Young Sktheri researchers, who had been studying under Chen, demonstrated these new configurations. Their forms shifted and flowed in ways that would have been considered dangerously chaotic mere weeks ago. Now their movements were recognized as an evolution of traditional Sktheri art. The human concept of jazz improvisation has particular applications in quantum crystalline theory, one junior researcher explained, their form flowing through a series of experimental resonances. The acceptance of uncertainty as a creative force rather than a flaw in measurement has opened new avenues of scientific exploration. The orchestra swelled into a crescendo, and the entire chamber seemed to come alive. The crystalline walls, floors, and ceiling began resonating in perfect harmony, creating a multi-sensory experience that merged human artistic expression with Sktheri biological nature. Several of the human musicians gasped in wonder as their music took visible form in the crystalline structures around them. "This is just the beginning," Chen announced, his voice carrying through the harmonics. "Imagine what we can learn from each other. Your crystalline technology combined with human creativity could revolutionize everything from space travel to entertainment. We could create symphony halls that are living instruments, ships that sing through space, and forms of communication that transcend traditional language." First observer Kellex stepped forward, their form now confidently displaying a complex pattern that incorporated both traditional Sktheri geometry and the flowing rhythms of human music. "When we first encountered Dr. Chen, we thought we had captured a specimen for study. Instead, he captured our imagination and showed us possibilities we had never conceived." The chamber resonated with a new sound, Sktheri laughter, crystalline, and musical, harmonizing perfectly with their human counterparts. The sound rippled through the ship's structure, creating patterns of light and color that danced through the corridors. Chen smiled at the display. The Sktheri hadn't just learned to appreciate human music. They had learned to create their own songs, merging the mathematical precision of their nature with the joyful unpredictability of human expression. 5 years later, the crystalline Academy of Human Studies sparkled under the light of three suns. Its architecture represented a revolutionary blend of Scatheri precision and human artistic expression, each wall and spire designed to resonate with specific musical frequencies. Within its grand halls, students from both species gathered to learn from each other. Dr. Chen, now serving as the Academy's lead researcher, stood before a class of eager students. His lecture chamber had been specifically tuned to enhance both verbal communication and crystalline resonance, allowing him to demonstrate principles through both explanation and harmony. Today marks the anniversary of what historians call the laughing contact. He began, his voice creating subtle patterns in the crystalline walls. Though I still think shooting at my ship was a bit of an overreaction to a simple navigation error. The chamber filled with both human laughter and Scatheri harmonic expressions of amusement. The once rigid distinction between the species' forms of expression had evolved into a beautiful synthesis of styles. The true breakthrough, Chen continued, activating a holographic display, wasn't in our technology or even our music. It was in recognizing that what appears as chaos to one perspective might be the highest form of order from another. The display showed the original encounter between the stellar prism and Chen's small research vessel. The Scatheri students pulsed with embarrassment at their species' initial response, while the human students grinned at their professor's documented laughter in the face of danger. Every civilization develops according to its nature, Chen explained, as the hologram shifted to show the evolution of human-Scatheri relations. The Scatheri built their society on crystalline harmony and mathematical precision. We humans embraced uncertainty and found art in imperfection. Apart, each approach had its limitations. Together, he gestured, and the chamber's walls began to sing. Complex mathematical equations flowed through the crystalline structure, each formula expressing itself as both pure music and visible light. It was a symphony of science, a perfect blend of human creativity and Scatheri precision. Professor, a young Scatheri student chimed in, their form displaying the new patterns that had become popular among their youth. Is it true that you planned the entire first contact scenario? That your laughter was a calculated response. Chen's eyes twinkled. Now that would have been quite clever, wouldn't it? To anticipate being shot at and turn it into a cultural exchange opportunity. He paused for effect, creating a perfect moment of resonant tension in the chamber. Truth is, I just thought it was funny. Sometimes the best diplomacy comes from genuine reactions rather than calculated responses. The chamber resonated with appreciation. The students had learned that spontaneity and precision weren't opposites, but complementary forces that could create something greater than the sum of their parts. The real success story isn't just in our technological or cultural exchange, Chen concluded, as the chamber walls displayed scenes from across human and Scatheri space. It's in how we learn to see ourselves through each other's eyes. The Scatheri discovered that their crystalline nature could accommodate joy and spontaneity. Humans learned that our chaos could find expression through mathematical precision. He brought up one final hologram, the new joint fleet of exploration vessels, each ship designed to resonate with the music of the cosmos itself. We shot at each other and created harmony. We sought to study each other and became partners in discovery. But most importantly, Chen grinned, and the entire chamber lit up with synchronized patterns of light and sound. We learned that the universe has a sense of humor, and it's best appreciated together. The chamber filled with a perfect blend of human laughter and crystalline harmonics, creating a symphony that would have been impossible just 5 years ago. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, other species heard the sound of joy expressed in both music and mathematics, and wondered what strange and wonderful civilization they might soon encounter. After all, in a universe full of possibilities, laughter might just be the most universal language of all.